Chapter 1, Black Satin Blindfold. In the blazing heat of August, the street was a swirl of activity. The relentless cicada buzz mingled with the intermittent blares of car horns, echoing through the crowded avenue. The scorching sun beat down on the gray-brown asphalt, causing the entire street to ripple in the heat. Under the few sparse patches of shade by the roadside, a group of young people huddled together, smoking and waiting for the traffic light. Suddenly, one of them, who was puffing away, seemed to spot something and let out a soft "mm." His gaze fixed on a corner of the street. "Arno, what are you looking at?" his friend asked. Arno, still staring at the corner, finally said, "You know, how does a blind person cross the road?" His friend was taken aback for a moment, then said, "Usually, blind people are accompanied by someone or guided by a guide dog. In modern cities, there are even audio signals at traffic lights. If all else fails, they might use sound and a guide cane to inch their way across." Arno shook his head. "But what if there's no one to guide them, no guide dog, no audio signals, and even the guide cane is being used to carry a bucket of peanut oil? Are you trying to be funny?" His friend rolled his eyes and followed Arno's gaze. The next moment, he was stunned. At the corner of the street stood a young man in a black short-sleeve shirt. His eyes were covered by thick layers of black satin, blocking out all light. In his left hand, he carried a cheap shopping bag full of vegetables, while his right hand held a guide cane slung over his shoulder like a pole. At the end of the cane, a large bucket of golden peanut oil gleamed under the sun. A black satin blindfold, a cane over the shoulder, vegetables in one hand, and a bucket of oil in the other. This bizarre sight immediately drew the attention of the crowd around him. "Hey, look at that guy. He's so strange. Can he really see the road with all that fabric covering his eyes? Didn't you see the guide cane he's holding? He's obviously blind. What century is this? Blind people usually wear sunglasses. Who wraps their eyes in fabric on a hot day? Isn't it too uncomfortable?" "Exactly. And who have you seen using a guide cane to carry things instead of guiding their way? Kids these days sure know how to play." The cicadas' cries couldn't drown out the whispers of the onlookers. They curiously watched the boy and debated whether he was really blind or just pretending, as they anxiously watched the red light. Just then, a clear, bright voice spoke up next to the boy. "Big brother, can I help you cross the street?" It was a little girl in a school uniform, about 12 or 13 years old. Sweat glistened on her cheeks, and her big, dark eyes looked at the boy with concern and innocence. The boy was momentarily startled, then turned his head towards her, a smile forming at the corner of his mouth. "Sure." He shifted the bag of vegetables to his right hand, wiped sweat from his brow with his shirt, and gently took the girl's hand. Click. The light turned green. The boy stepped forward, walking across the street with the girl. The little girl was nervous, glancing around to watch for oncoming traffic, her steps careful and timid. As for the boy, he walked steadily. To the onlookers, it seemed more like an older brother helping a younger sister cross the street than a kind girl helping a blind man. The road wasn't wide. In just a few seconds, the two reached the other side. The boy thanked the girl and then turned towards a narrow alley without looking back. "He's not blind," Arno declared firmly, "he must be able to see." One of Arno's friends, resting his chin on his hand, pondered for a moment, then had a realization. "I get it. He's cosplaying as a blind monk." Smack! A solid slap landed on his friend's back of the head. Arno muttered angrily, "Idiot, always thinking about games. Who has nothing better to do than cosplay a blind monk on the street? Are you out of your mind?" After a brief pause, Arno mumbled, "Besides, the blind monk's blindfold is red, and this one isn't even close." "Arno, don't lecture me, shut up." "Okay." As they were arguing, a quiet young man who had been standing aside stared thoughtfully at the boy's retreating figure, frowning slightly. "What's up?" Arno noticed his gaze. "I know him." "You do?" "Yes." The young man nodded. "When my cousin was in elementary school, I heard about a student from his school who had an accident. The student went blind and had to use black satin to cover his eyes. I also heard there were mental issues." "Mental issues?" Arno was puzzled, recalling what he had seen earlier. He seemed fine to me. That was 10 years ago. He might have recovered by now. But back then, it was a big deal. The student withdrew from school shortly after and was said to have transferred to a special school for the blind. At this moment, another person eagerly interjected, "By the way, what exactly was the accident?" To cause blindness and mental issues, it couldn't have been something as simple as an accident. Was it some sort of curse? I don't know. He paused, but I heard it was even stranger than that. Such a tragic person. Arno sighed. What's his name? I think it's Lin. Lin. Lin Chi-yi? As the evening glow bathed the room, Lin Chi-yi opened the door. Instantly, the aroma of cooking from inside wafted into his nostrils. He took a deep breath, swallowed, and walked into the house with his bags. Creak! The old door squeaked, masking the sound of frying from the kitchen. A middle-aged woman came out from the kitchen, saw Lin Chi-yi carrying the heavy bags, and gasped in surprise. She hurried over to him. Little Chi, why did you bring so many things at once again? She wiped her hands on her apron and took the bags from him, chattering away. A whole bucket of peanut oil? Are you wasting the government's subsidies again? Auntie, the subsidies for the disabled are meant for living expenses. Buying oil is just making good use of it, Lin Chi-yi said with a smile. Nonsense. That money is saved for your college education. You can't waste it like that. Let me tell you, Auntie's earnings from working are enough to support the three of us. Don't spend your money recklessly. Auntie gently wiped the oil bucket with her hand, her expression pained. She muttered, such a big bucket of oil, and it's branded. Must have cost a lot. Before Lin Chi-yi could respond, Auntie suddenly had a realization. Wait. How did you bring all this back? Oh, I met a few kind people on the way who helped me carry it, Lin Chi-yi replied calmly. Good, good. It's nice to see there are still good people in society. Did you thank them properly? I did. Lin Chi-yi changed the subject. Auntie, where is Jean? He's doing his homework on the balcony. Oh, the psychiatrist from the mental health clinic came for the routine checkup this year. He's resting in the room. You should go see him. I'll go cook, and I'll call you when it's ready. Lin Chi-yi's steps paused briefly, and he responded with an okay, before turning toward the bedroom. Hello, I'm Dr. Lee from Sunshine Mental Health Clinic. As Lin Chi-yi entered, the young man sitting on a small stool in the bedroom stood up, speaking kindly. His face was adorned with large black-framed glasses, giving him a scholarly appearance. Lin Chi-yi raised an eyebrow in surprise. Wasn't it Dr. Han who used to come? Dr. Han was promoted to deputy director last year, Dr. Lee said with a smile, a hint of envy in his eyes. Lin Chi-yi nodded slightly. Oh, I see. It was only natural for Dr. Han, being much older and skilled, to be promoted. Having a younger doctor for regular checkups made sense. Dr. Lee cleared his throat and took out a stack of medical records from his bag. Sorry, since I'm new, I'm not too familiar with your case yet. Let me get a brief understanding, Dr. Lee said apologetically. Lin Chi-yi nodded. Your name is Lin Chi-yi? Yes. You're 17 years old. Yes. Birthday? October 5th. The records say you went blind 10 years ago and were admitted to our hospital due to some issues? Yes. Dr. Lee pondered for a moment. Have you ever changed your name? No. Why do you ask? Lin Chi-yi was puzzled. Dr. Lee scratched his head awkwardly. I might have overthought it. He pointed at the age on the medical record and then at the 10 years ago note. You see, you went blind 10 years ago, when you were 7. Your name is Lin Chi-yi, so I thought you might have changed it after becoming blind. Lin Chi-yi was silent for a long moment before shaking his head. No. I've never changed my name. My parents named me Lin Chi-yi before I was born. Well, that's quite, cough cough, Dr. Lee began, realizing he had been impolite and quickly shut his mouth. Quite a coincidence, Lin Shiyi said. Indeed, quite a coincidence. Dr. Lee, slightly embarrassed, quickly shifted the topic. Well, the records don't detail the accident that caused your blindness and mental issues. If you're comfortable sharing, could you tell me about it? Before Lin Shiyi could respond, Dr. Lee added quickly, I don't mean to offend. Understanding more about the patient helps us provide better care. Of course, if you prefer not to share, I won't push. Lin Shiyi sat quietly, his eyes seeming to gaze through the black satin. After a moment, he began speaking slowly, there's nothing I can't say, but you might not believe it, and you might even send me back to the mental hospital. No, don't think of this as a doctor-patient relationship. This is just a casual conversation between friends, nothing more, Dr. Lee joked. Even if you tell me you were pulled into an alchemical furnace by Laozi, I believe it. Lin Shiyi was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. As a child, I was fascinated by astronomy. And then? That night, I lay on the eaves of my old house and looked at the moon. What did you see? The jade rabbit? Dr. Lee smiled. Lin Shiyi shook his head. His next words froze Dr. Lee's smile on his face. No, I saw an angel. Lin Shiyi said seriously, gesturing with his hands. A seraph with 6 white wings, enveloped in golden light.